Marcus Tate stood in Detroit's stifling courtroom, sweat glistening on his brow, as Judge Raymond Holt's laughter boomed, mocking his plea to save his dad's auto shop from Pinnacle Properties eviction. The gavel banged, dismissing him, until Marcus slammed a hefty stack of papers down, voice steady. "This isn't over, Your Honor." Holt's cackle choked off, eyes narrowing as silence gripped the room. Was it a bluff? Those pages held a secret that could unravel Marcus's world forever. What would they reveal? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode is one you can't miss. Marcus Tate stepped back into the courtroom 3 days later, his boots scuffing the polished floor. The weight of his father's legacy pressing on his shoulders like a rusted engine block. His suit, a faded navy number borrowed from his cousin, hung loose on his frame, the tie knotted unevenly from hands more accustomed to gripping wrenches than silk. He carried a battered cardboard box stuffed with yellowed receipts his dad had squirreled away in the shop's back office, proof that Pinnacle Properties had no right to snatch the place. Across the aisle stood Vincent Kessler, the corporate attorney with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and a suit that cost more than Marcus's rent for a year. Kessler's polished shoes clicked as he adjusted his cufflinks, his lips curling just enough to signal he'd already won. Judge Raymond Holt slouched in his high-backed chair, peering over wire-rimmed glasses, his mouth twitching with that same amusement Marcus had heard in the first hearing. The air stank of old wood and older prejudice, thick enough to choke on, and Marcus felt every eye in the room sizing him up, waiting for him to crumble. Holt tapped his gavel twice, a lazy rhythm, and leaned back, his voice dripping with mockery. "Mr. Tate, still representing yourself? Bold move for a grease monkey." The gallery, packed with Pinnacle's suits and a few bored reporters, rippled with stifled chuckles. Marcus squared his shoulders, his calloused fingers tightening. On the box. "Yes, Your Honor. This shop's been in my family for 30 years. I'm not letting it go without a fight." Holt's eyebrows lifted, his smirk widening as if Marcus had just told a punchline. Kessler cleared his throat, stepping forward with the grace of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. "Your Honor, this is a simple matter. Pinnacle Properties acquired the property at 237 MLK Boulevard after the defendant failed to pay rent for 6 consecutive months. The lease lapsed. End of story." His voice was smooth, practiced, each word landing like a polished stone, and he slid a crisp eviction notice across the table, its edges pristine against the courtroom's worn grain. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd spent nights hunched over the kitchen table, a flickering bulb overhead, sifting through those receipts until his eyes burned. His dad, a wiry man with a laugh like a backfiring muffler, had kept every scrap, scribbling dates in smudged ink. Marcus hauled the box to the clerk, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "That's a lie, Your Honor. I've got proof we paid every month on time cash to the old landlord before Pinnacle swooped in. These receipts go back 5 years." He pulled out a fistful, the paper crinkling as he spread them across the table, dates and amounts in his dad's jagged scrawl glaring up at the room. $200 March 15th, 2019. $200 April 15th, 2019. On and on, a lifeline in faded blue ink. "You'll have seen them," Gallery murmured. A low buzz of surprise, and Holt's smirk faltered, his fingers pausing mid-tap on the gavel. Kessler's eyes flicked to the papers, his composure holding but his jaw tightening just enough to betray a crack. Holt leaned forward, squinting at the mess of receipts like they were a puzzle he didn't care to solve. "You expect me to believe? These scribbles mean anything, Tate. Cash payments, no bank records." His tone was sharp now, less amused, more annoyed that Marcus dared to waste his time. Marcus met his gaze, unflinching, the heat of the room prickling his skin. "My dad didn't trust banks, Your Honor. He paid in person every month to Mr. Grayson, the old owner. Pinnacle bought the building 2 years ago, but they never told us the rules changed. We kept paying until Grayson passed. Then they claimed we stopped." He pointed to a receipt dated 6 months back, the last one before Pinnacle's eviction notice landed like a sledgehammer. "This proves they're lying. They took our money and called it nothing." The judge's frown deepened, his thick fingers snatching a receipt to inspect it closer, the paper trembling slightly in his grip. Kessler shifted, his cufflinks glinting as he crossed his arms, but his voice stayed cool, cutting through the rustle of the room. Your Honor, even if these were legitimate, which I highly doubt, they don't change the fact that Pinnacle Properties owns the lease now. The defendant failed to comply with our updated payment terms, sent via certified mail he conveniently ignored. Marcus's pulse quickened, his fists clenching at his sides. Certified mail? I never got any letter. They're making that up to cover their tracks. Holt's eyes flicked between them, his chair creaking as he shifted his bulk. And for a moment, Marcus thought he saw a flicker of doubt in the old man's stare. The judge rubbed his temple, exhaling through his nose like a bull about to charge. These receipts, they're messy, but they've got dates. I'll give you that, Tate. Maybe there's something here. Marcus's chest loosened, a sliver of hope sparking in the haze of exhaustion. He'd done it, cracked the judge's wall, made him listen. The gallery leaned forward, the air buzzing with a shift nobody expected from the black man in the cheap suit. Holt scratched his chin, his voice grudging. I'll take a closer look at these before I rule. Kessler, you'd better have your paperwork tighter than this. Marcus almost smiled, imagining his dad's grin if he'd seen this, the little guy making the big shots sweat. But Kessler wasn't done. He stepped forward, his smile thin and venomous like a snake bearing fangs. Your Honor, I'd caution the court against taking these receipts at face value. My client has reason to believe they're forged. We'll need time to investigate this creative accounting. He lingered on forged, letting it hang in the air, and the gallery gasped, a sharp intake that sucked the hope right out. Ferv Marcus's lungs. Holt's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing as he turned back to Marcus, the flicker of doubt replaced by something colder, harder. Forged? You saying this man's trying to pull a fast one on me, Kessler? Marcus's stomach dropped, the room tilting as Kessler nodded, his voice oily with confidence. Precisely, Your Honor. It's not uncommon for desperate tenants to fabricate evidence when they're cornered. We'll prove it given the chance. Marcus opened his mouth to protest, his throat dry as sandpaper, but Holt waved him off, his gavel slamming down with a crack that echoed off the walls. Enough. I'll hold off on a ruling until you sort this out, Kessler. Tate, you'd better pray these hold up, because if they don't, you're not just losing that shop, you're looking at jail time. The judge's lips curled again. That same twitching smirk, and Marcus felt the weight crash back down, heavier than before. The courtroom buzzed as Kessler gathered his briefcase, his assistant whispering something that made him chuckle low and smug. Marcus stood frozen, the box of receipts suddenly feeling like a bomb that could blow up in his face. He'd thought he'd won a round, made Holt see the truth, but Kessler's accusation twisted it all, turned his dad's lifeline into a noose. The judge's words rang in his ears. Jail time. A threat that loomed larger than the eviction ever had. He'd walked in with proof, walked out with a target on his back, and the shop, his dad's pride, hung by a thread thinner than the ink on those papers. Kessler shot him a glance as he passed, his eyes glinting with a promise. This was just the beginning. Marcus gripped the table, his knuckles whitening, knowing he'd have to fight harder than ever to keep what was his, and the system, with Holt at its helm, was already sharpening its claws. Marcus Tate slumped at his kitchen table, the receipts from his dad's shop scattered like fallen leaves across the chipped wood, each one a lifeline now twisted into a lie by Vincent Kessler's accusation. The forgery claim gnawed at him, a splinter under his skin, and he knew he had to prove those papers were real or lose everything. The shop, his freedom, maybe more. His apartment, a cramped walk-up on Detroit's east side, smelled of burnt coffee and desperation. The walls, thin enough to hear his neighbor's TV blaring late-night ads. He rubbed his eyes, gritty from sleepless nights, and dialed the only name that came to mind. Leon Brooks, a wiry old gearhead who'd worked the shop's counter for a decade before Pinnacle's takeover. Leon's voice crackled through the phone, rough as gravel. Yeah, Marcus, I saw your dad pay Grayson every month, cash in hand like clockwork. Those receipts, real as steel. Marcus's chest loosened, a flicker of light in the dark. Could Leon be the key to turning this around? He tracked Leon down the next day at a dive bar 3 blocks from the shop, the kind of place where the jukebox hummed Motown and the air clung to your clothes. Leon sat hunched over a beer, his grey hair patchy under a faded cap. His fingers, drumming the table like he was still tapping out oil changes. Marcus slid into the booth, his voice low. "I need you in court, man. Kessler's saying I faked those papers. You're the only one who can back me up." Leon's eyes darted to the door, then back, his nod slow but firm. "I'll do it. Your dad was good to me. Ain't right what they're pulling." Marcus clapped his shoulder, hope surging like a revered engine. Was this the break he'd been praying for? He spent the night prepping Leon, rehearsing every detail, every date, until the old man could recite it blind. By morning, Marcus felt something close to confidence, a rare guest these days. The courtroom buzzed when they walked in, Leon shuffling beside Marcus, his work boots scuffing the floor in rhythm with Marcus's own. Judge Raymond Holt perched on his bench, his glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights, that familiar smirk tugging at his lips as he spotted Marcus. "Back again, Tate? With a friend this time?" His tone was thick with mockery, but Marcus stood tall, his pulse steady. "Yes, Your Honor, this is Leon Brooks, witness to my dad's payments." Holt's smirk twitched, less certain, and the gallery, packed with Pinnacle's cronies, leaned in, a rustle of suits and whispers. Kessler stood, his cufflinks flashing as he smoothed his tie, his voice dripping with disdain. "A witness? Convenient. Let's hear this fairy tale." Marcus ignored him, guiding Leon to the stand, where the old man swore in, his hand trembling slightly on the Bible. Leon's testimony rolled out steady, his gravelly voice cutting through the rooms. I worked at Tate's Auto for 10 years. Watched Mr. Tate hand $200 to Grayson every month. Cash, no fuss. Saw it with my own eyes every time." Marcus watched Holt's face, the judge's fingers pausing on his gavel, his brow creasing as Leon rattled off dates that matched the receipts to the day. April 15th, 2019. May 15th, 2019. The room grew quieter, the weight of truth pressing down, and Marcus felt it, a tide turning. Could Holt really ignore this? The judge scribbled something, his smirk gone, replaced by a thin line of irritation. Kessler shifted, his jaw tight, but he stayed silent, letting Leon finish. When the old man stepped down, Marcus caught his eye, a nod of thanks passing between them. For a moment he thought he'd done it, cracked the lie wide open. Holt cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "Well, Brooks, you've got a good memory for an old-timer. I'll give this some weight. Tate, you might have bought yourself a day." Marcus exhaled, his fists unclenching, the shop's shadow looming a little less dark. The gallery murmured, a mix of surprise and skepticism, and Kessler's assistant scribbled furiously, but Marcus didn't care. He'd made Holt listen, forced a crack in the wall. Was this the start of justice? He walked Leon out, the old man clapping his back, muttering, "You got this, kid." Marcus nodded, a spark of fight rekindling. But that night, as he locked, his door, a chill hit him. He didn't hear the van idling outside, didn't see the shadows moving fast. What had he just set in motion? By midnight, Pinnacle's muscle had moved. 2 bruisers, hired by Kessler's whispered orders, caught Leon stumbling home from the bar, his cap still crooked. They dragged him into an alley off Jefferson Avenue, the streetlights flickering, like they knew what was coming. Fists slammed into Leon's ribs, his face blood splattering the cracked pavement as he gasped. "I told the truth." One thug snarled, "Truth don't matter, old man," and a boot cracked his jaw, silencing him. They left him crumpled, a rag doll in the dark, and by dawn, a jogger found him, barely breathing. Marcus got the call at 6, Tanya's voice shaking. Through the line. "Leon's in the hospital. They got him bad." His stomach twisted, guilt clawing up his throat. Had he dragged Leon into this trap? The next day, Marcus limped into court, his eyes bloodshot, Leon's absence a ghost at his side. Kessler stood waiting, his smile sharp as a blade, holding a single sheet of paper like a trophy. "Your Honor, I have a statement from Leon Brooks, retracting his testimony. Seems Mr. Tate paid him $50 to lie on the stand. He's..." Slid the paper to the clerk. Leon's shaky signature scrawled at the bottom, dated that morning from a hospital bed. Marcus's heart sank, his voice hoarse as he shot up. "That's impossible. Leon's half dead because of them." Holt's smirk returned, wider now, his gavel tapping a slow, mocking beat. "Half dead or not, Tate, this says he's a liar. And you put him up to it. Perjury's a serious charge." The gallery gasped, a wave of shock rolling through, and Kessler leaned back, his eyes glinting with triumph. Marcus's mind raced, replaying Leon's words, the beating, the timing. How had they forced that signature? He lunged forward, his voice cracking. "Your Honor, they attacked him. That's no retraction, it's coercion." Holt waved him off, his laugh low and guttural. "Sit down, Tate. You're spinning stories. Now I've seen enough. Those receipts, worthless. And you're on thin ice." The gavel slammed, a gunshot in Marcus's ears, and the room tilted, the shop slipping further away. Kessler gathered his papers, his assistant whispering, something that made him nod, a predator savoring the kill. Marcus sank into his chair, the weight of Leon's blood on his hands, the system's claws sinking deeper. Holt's parting shot hit hardest. "Next time, Tate, bring something real, or I'll lock you up myself." The threat echoed, a promise of worse to come. The shop, his dad's dream, dangled by a thread, and Marcus saw it now. The game was rigged from the start. Leon's beating wasn't just a warning. It was a gut punch, proof Pinnacle would break bones to win. How far would they go to bury him? Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Marcus should have seen this betrayal coming. Hit like if you're raging at Kessler's dirty tricks, and subscribe if you're rooting for Marcus to fight back, because this story's only getting wilder. What happens when a man with nothing left to lose takes on a system that's already counted him out? Marcus Tate paced his sister Tanya's living room, the floorboards creaking under his boots, the sting of Leon's beating still raw in his gut like a fresh oil burn. The shop, his dad's legacy, teetered on the edge, and Vincent Kessler's forgery lie had turned Marcus's proof into a perjury threat, a noose tightening with every smirk from Judge Raymond Holt. He couldn't sit still, couldn't let Pinnacle Properties bury him without a fight. Tanya, her braids pulled tight, watched him from the couch, her voice sharp. "You're gonna get yourself killed, Marcus. They broke Leon's jaw. What's next?" He stopped, his jaw clenching, eyes burning with a fire she hadn't seen since their dad died. "Next, we hit back. They think I'm done, but I'm not." She sighed, but her nod was firm, a silent pact forged in the dim light of a 40-watt bulb. He called in the cavalry the next morning, rounding up Tanya, 5 loyal shop customers, and a dozen neighbors who'd known his dad's handshake. They met at the corner of MLK Boulevard, the air crisp with October chill, breath fogging as they clutched cardboard signs scrawled with marker. "Save Tate's Auto. Pinnacle steals homes." Marcus led them downtown, his voice hoarse but steady as he shouted through a megaphone borrowed from a church. "This ain't just about me. They're taking our places, our history, because we're black and they think we don't matter." The crowd swelled, 20, then 50, then 100, boots stomping pavement outside Pinnacle's glass-fronted office tower. Passers-by stopped, phones out, filming the sea of fists pumping skyward, the chant rising like exhaust from a revved V8. Marcus felt it, a pulse of power, a crack in the wall Kessler and Holt had built. He locked eyes with Tanya, her sign high, and for a moment he believed they could win. The tower's windows gleamed cold and unyielding, Pinnacle's logo etched in gold above the doors. A security guard barked into a radio, his face tight, but the crowd didn't budge. Marcus climbed onto a milk crate, his megaphone crackling. "They beat my witness. They lied in court. We're not letting them take our shop." Cheers erupted, a roar that rattled the glass, and Marcus's chest swelled, adrenaline drowning the ache of Leon's blood on his hands. Reporters trickled in, notebooks flipping open, a local news van rolling up with its antenna spiking the sky. He spotted a kid, maybe 15, snapping pics, his grin wide. This was it, the tide shifting, the little guy making noise too loud to ignore. Pinnacle's suits peered from the 5th floor, shadows behind tinted panes, and Marcus thought he saw Kessler's silhouette, a flicker of unease in that perfect posture. Then the sirens wailed. 3 squad cars screeched around the corner, lights, flashing red and blue, cutting through the crowd like a blade. Marcus froze, the megaphone slipping in his grip as cops spilled out, batons gleaming, voices barking. "Disperse, now!" Tanya grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. "Marcus, they're coming for us." He shook his head, shouting back, "We're peaceful, this is our right." But the lead officer, a squat man with a buzz cut and a sneer, jabbed a finger at him. "You're the ringleader, Tate. We got a call, riot in progress." Marcus's stomach lurched. A call? From who? Kessler's smirk flashed in his mind, and before he could blink, the cops charged, shoving bodies aside, snatching signs, and slamming fists into anyone too slow to scatter. The crowd screamed, splitting like water around rocks, but Marcus stood, his ground, Tanya at his side, until a baton cracked his ribs, doubling him over. He gasped, asphalt biting his palms as he hit the ground, Tanya's yell piercing the chaos. "Leave him alone!" Another cop yanked her back, cuffing her wrists, and Marcus lunged, only to catch a boot in his gut, air exploding from his lungs. The noise blurred, shouts and sirens and breaking glass, but through the haze he saw them coming. More vans, more badges, all barreling toward the shop 3 blocks away. His heart sank, a cold dread clawing up his spine as he staggered to his feet, shoving past a cop to chase the convoy, Tanya's cries fading behind him. He reached MLK Boulevard 10 minutes later, lungs burning, legs shaking, and stopped dead. The shop, his dad's sanctuary, was a war zone. Cops swarmed the lot, flashlights slicing the dusk, their radios squawking as they kicked in the side door. Tools crashed to the ground, wrenches and jacks clattering like bones, and Marcus choked on a yell as an officer swung a sledgehammer into the workbench, splintering wood his dad had sanded smooth. Spray cans hissed, red paint streaking the walls with jagged slurs. "Go back," and worse, the letters dripping like blood across the concrete. He charged forward, fists balled, but 2 cops grabbed him, pinning his arms, their breath hot on his neck. "Stay out, Trash, this is a crime scene now." Crime scene. His mind reeled, the protest's fire snuffed out by this calculated gut punch. They hauled him to the precinct, cuffs biting his wrists, and dumped him in a cell with Tanya. Her lips split, her eyes blazing. She whispered, "They planned this, Marcus. Kessler's behind it." He nodded, the truth sinking in, bitter as rust. The raid wasn't random. It was revenge, Pinnacle flexing muscle to crush his defiance. Hours later, a lawyer from legal. They'd got them out, a wiry woman with tired eyes who muttered about filing complaints. Marcus didn't care. He needed Holt, needed the court to see this outrage. He drafted an emergency appeal that night, his hands shaking as he typed, detailing the protest, the raid, the slurs, begging for a stay on the eviction. Tanya proofread it, her voice soft. "You think he'll listen?" Marcus didn't answer, just hit print, praying for a miracle. The next morning he stood before Holt again, the courtroom colder, emptier, the judge's smirk sharper than ever. Marcus laid out the appeal, his voice steady despite the bruises blooming under his shirt. "Your Honor, they trashed my shop, attacked my sister, all because I spoke up. This ain't justice, it's a setup." He slid photos across the table, the slurs glaring in flashlit red, the wreckage a silent scream. Holt barely glanced at them, his fingers drumming the bench, his laugh low and guttural. "A setup? Tate, you incited a riot, and now you're crying about the mess? Thugs don't get sympathy in my court." Marcus's blood boiled, his fists clenching. "Thugs? We were peaceful until your boys showed up." Holt's eyes narrowed, his gavel slamming down. "Denied. You've got no proof Pinnacle called this in. Case closed." Marcus staggered back, the room spinning, the shop's ruins flashing. In his mind, his dad's voice fading under the weight of Holt's words. Kessler sat smug in the corner, his assistant scribbling, a victory lap already underway. The raid had gutted more than the shop. It had torn open the truth. Holt didn't. Just favor Pinnacle, he hated Marcus, hated what he stood for. The slurs on the walls weren't random, they were a message, endorsed by the badge and the bench. Tanya grabbed his arm as they left, her whisper fierce. "We're not done, Marcus." He nodded, but inside he felt the cracks widening, the fight bleeding out of him. The shop was a husk now, and Pinnacle's claws were deeper than he'd ever imagined. Marcus Tate sat on the edge of Tanya's couch, the springs groaning under him, the air thick with the stench of defeat after the shop's raid. The walls still echoed with Judge Raymond Holt's sneering dismissal. "Thugs don't get sympathy." and the red slurs sprayed across his dad's legacy burned behind his eyes. He'd lost the appeal, lost the protest, and now Pinnacle Properties' padlocks glinted on the shop's doors, a steel taunt he couldn't pry loose. Tanya paced behind him, her split lips scabbed over, her voice tight. "We can't stop, Marcus. They're laughing at us." He nodded, his jaw locked, but inside he was drowning, the fight leaking out of him like oil from a cracked pan. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Carla Monroe, a local activist he'd met at a rally last year. "Heard about the raid. Meet me, I can help." A spark flickered. Could she be the lifeline he needed? He found Carla the next afternoon at a coffee shop on Woodward Avenue, its windows fogged with steam, the hum of espresso machines cutting through the tension in his chest. She sat in a corner booth, her dreads swept into a high bun, her laptop glowing with a blog page titled Detroit, Uncovered. She was 30, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for digging into corporate dirt. Marcus slid in across from her, his voice low. "Pinnacle trashed my shop, Carla. Cops called it a riot cleanup. I'm out of moves." She leaned forward, her fingers tapping the table. "You're not out. I've been tracking Pinnacle for months. They're rotten, Marcus, and I can prove it. Give me something to start with." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, showing her photos of the raid, the slurs, the wreckage. Her eyes narrowed, a fire lighting them. "This is gold. Let me dig." For 2 days, Marcus holed up with her in her cramped apartment, the walls plastered with news clippings, the air thick with printer ink and takeout grease. Carla hacked public records, cross-referencing Pinnacle's filings, her fingers flying over keys as Marcus fed her coffee and questions. Late on the second night, she froze, her screen flashing an email she'd pried from a whistleblower's leak. "Look at this, Marcus. Kessler bribed a city planner, guy named Daniels, to rush your eviction. $10,000 wired last month." Marcus's pulse spiked, his breath catching as he read the words. "Expedite Tate's auto. No. Delays." It was a smoking gun, proof Pinnacle played dirty beyond the courtroom. He grinned, a rare crack in his exhaustion. "This'll bury them, Carla. Holt can't ignore this." She posted it on her blog at midnight, the headline screaming, "Pinnacle. Properties caught in bribery scandal." The email pasted raw for the world to see. By morning, it had 5,000 hits, comments flooding in, shares spiking across Detroit's social feeds. Marcus watched the numbers climb from Tanya's couch, his hopes surging like a jump-started battery. He filed an emergency motion with Holt that afternoon, attaching the email, his hands steady as he handed it to the clerk. "This proves they set me up, Your Honor. They paid to steal my shop." The courtroom hummed when he walked in, the gallery half full with reporters and neighbors, the air buzzing with whispers. Holt squinted at the printout, his smirk gone, replaced by a scowl that creased his forehead. "A bribe, Tate? Bold claim. Where'd you get this?" Marcus stood tall. "Public leak. It's real and it's damning." Holt rubbed his temple, his voice grudging. "This complicates things. I'll order an investigation into Pinnacle's actions. Kessler, you'd better have answers." Marcus's chest loosened, a victory he could taste, the shop's padlocks wobbling in his mind. The gallery rustled, a reporter scribbling fast, and Marcus caught Tanya's eye from the back, her nod fierce. He'd done it, flipped the script, made Holt blink. But Kessler sat still, his cufflinks glinting, his face unreadable. Marcus should have known better. That night, Carla called, her voice shaking through the line. "Marcus, they got to me. Pinnacle's goons showed up, smashed my laptop, said I'd disappear if I didn't fix this." His stomach dropped, ice flooding his veins. "Fix it? Carla, what'd you do?" She showed up at court the next day, her dreads loose, her eyes hollow as she took the stand. Kessler called her as a surprise witness, his smile thin and lethal. "Miss Monroe, tell us about that email." Carla's hands trembled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus gave it to me. Said he found it online, but he edited it, added the bribe part. It's fake." The gallery gasped, a sharp wave rolling through, and Marcus shot up, his voice cracking. "That's a lie. She posted it herself." Holt's smirk returned wider, his gavel tapping a slow, mocking beat. "Fake, huh? Tate, you're digging deeper every time you open your mouth." Marcus's head spun, Carla avoiding his gaze, her betrayal a knife twisting in his ribs. How had they turned her? Holt leaned forward, his tone dripping with scorn. "I've seen enough. Investigation's off. And Tate, this stunt? Fraud's on the table now. You're lucky I don't lock you up today." The gavel slammed, a thunderclap that buried Marcus's. Hope and Kessler gathered his briefcase, his assistant whispering something that made him nod, smug as ever. Marcus stumbled out, Tanya at his side, her whisper fierce. "She sold us out, Marcus. Pinnacle's got claws everywhere." He nodded, numb, the shop's padlock's now a permanent scar. That afternoon, he drove by MLK Boulevard, the sight punching. His gut, Pinnacle's crew bolting the doors tighter, a condemned sign nailed to the frame. Carla's flip wasn't just a loss, it was a death blow. Holt's racism fueling the fire, Kessler's threats pulling the strings. The system hadn't just turned on him, it had chewed him up, spat him out, and locked the door behind him. Leon's blood, the raid's wreckage, and now Carla's stab, each hit harder, each cut deeper, all because he dared to fight. Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Carla should have stood her ground, hit like if Holt's bias makes your blood boil, and subscribe if you're with Marcus through this nightmare, because the twists keep coming. What happens when a man betrayed by everyone finds a shred of proof in the ashes? Marcus Tate crouched in the damp basement of his buddy Jamal's row house, the air thick with mildew and the faint buzz of a flickering bulb swinging overhead. The shop was gone, padlocked tight after Carla's betrayal. Judge Raymond Holt's fraud charge hanging over him like a guillotine, and Pinnacle Properties' victory cemented in steel and scorn. He'd slipped out of Tanya's place at dawn, a duffel stuffed with clothes and his dad's old ledger, dodging cop cars that prowled Detroit's east side like wolves. Jamal, a lanky welder with a scar across his cheek, had waved him in. "No," questions asked. "Lay low, man, they're hunting you." Marcus nodded, his throat tight, the weight of Leon's blood, the raid's wreckage, and Carla's stab piling on his shoulders. He couldn't run forever, but he could fight smarter. The basement was a concrete cave, walls patched with mold, a folding table his war room. He spread out Pinnacle's public filings, pages he'd snatched from the county clerk's site before. Carla flipped, his eyes burning as he traced columns of numbers and dates. His dad's shop, 237 MLK Boulevard, flickered in every line, a ghost in the machine. Jamal dropped off a laptop, an ancient brick with a cracked screen, and Marcus dug in, cross-referencing tax records against Pinnacle's claims. Hours bled into midnight, his fingers stiff, coffee cold in a chipped mug, until he froze, a single entry glaring back, a tax lien filed 2 years back, claiming his dad owed $8,000, the hook Pinnacle used to justify the eviction. But the numbers didn't add up, the lien's date clashing with receipts he'd lost in court. His pulse hammered. Was this their real play? He dug deeper, pulling up the lien's filing, a PDF buried in the city's digital dump. The notary's name, Evelyn Price, stared back, her stamp crooked like an afterthought. Marcus cross-checked her with state records, his breath hitching as he found it. Price's license lapsed 3 months before the lien hit. Illegal, void, a crack in Pinnacle's armor. He leaned back, the chair creaking, a grin tugging at his lips for the first time in weeks. This wasn't just a mistake, it was fraud, a forged hook to yank the shop away. He had to get it to Holt, had to make him see, but the fraud charge pinned him down, a fugitive in his own city. How could he fight from the shadows? Jamal knew a clerk, a quiet woman named Marla, who worked the courthouse graveyard shift. Her brother a regular at the shop back in the day. Marcus scribbled a note, taped the lien printout to it, and handed it off, his voice low. "Tell her it's life or death, Jamal. She's my shot." Jamal nodded, slipping out into the night, and Marcus waited, pacing the basement's cold floor, the hum of a distant train rattling his nerves. Hours later, Jamal texted, "She got it to Holt. He's pissed but reading." Marcus exhaled, his fists unclenching, a sliver of hope piercing the dark. The next day, a courier banged on Jamal's door, dropping a summons. Holt dismissed the fraud charge, citing new evidence, and ordered Marcus to appear. He'd done it, dodged the noose, bought a breath. The shop wasn't back, But the lean could change everything. He walked into court 2 days later, his borrowed suit wrinkled, his ribs still sore from the raid's baton, but his head high. Holt glowered from the bench, his glasses fogged, his smirk replaced by a scowl that could curdle milk. "Tate, you're a cockroach," scurrying back with more papers. "What's this Leon nonsense?" Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady. "Your Honor, Pinnacle forged a tax lien to take my shop. The notary's license was dead when it was filed. It's void and they knew it." He slid the printout to the clerk, the room humming as the gallery, sparse but tense, leaned in. Holt snatched the page, his thick fingers flipping it over, his frown deepening. "A dead notary? You're saying Kessler's client built this whole case on quicksand?" Marcus nodded, his pulse steady. "Yes, sir, check the dates. It's fraud, plain as day." Holt rubbed his chin, his eyes flicking to Vincent Kessler, who sat rigid, his cufflinks dull under the lights, his jaw tight. "Kessler, this true?" The attorney rose, his voice smooth but strained. "Your Honor, this is a clerical error, nothing more. We'll clarify it." Holt grunted, his gavel tapping once. "Fine. Fraud charges off, Tate. You're clear for now, but this lien, I'll look into it." Marcus's chest loosened, a wind snatched from the jaws of defeat, the shop's ghost stirring in his mind. He turned to leave, Tanya waiting. Outside, her nod a silent cheer. He'd outsmarted them, turned their lie against them, and for a moment he thought he'd cracked the system's shell. But Kessler wasn't done. That night, as Marcus grabbed a burger at a dive near Jamal's, 2 squad cars screeched up, lights flashing, tires smoking on the asphalt. 4 cops burst in, badges gleaming, guns drawn, their shouts slicing the air. "Marcus Tate, you're under arrest." He dropped the burger, hands up, confusion flooding his gut. "For what? Holt cleared me." The lead cop, a beefy guy with a buzz cut, sneered, cuffing him hard enough to bruise. "Assault. You jumped a clerk, Marla Hayes, this morning. She's got a busted nose, says it's you." Marcus's head spun, his voice hoarse. "Marla? I never touched her. This is a setup." The cop laughed, dragging him outside, the street a blur of onlookers snapping pics. They threw him against the squad car, boots slamming his legs, fists pounding his back, blood trickling from his lip. As he gasped, "I didn't do it." A crowd gathered, phones up, but the cops didn't care, their radios crackling with orders. Marcus caught a glimpse through the precinct window as they hauled him in. Holt watching from his chambers, 3 stories up, his smirk wide, a king surveying his game. Kessler stood beside him, a shadow in the glass, his nod subtle but clear. The assault frame was his, a vicious counterpunch to the lean, and Marcus realized too late he'd walked into a trap. They shoved him into a cell, the door clanging shut, his body aching, his mind racing. Marla's name echoed, a lie forged in blood, and the shop slipped further away, Holt's laugh ringing in his ears. The beating didn't stop at the car. In the cell block, 2 guards cornered him, their batons swinging, cracking his ribs, his pleas drowned by their grunts. "Think you're smart, huh?" Holt says hi. They left him curled on the concrete, blood pooling under his cheek. The leans. Victory a distant memory. Kessler had flipped it, turned Marcus's win into a cage, and Holt's bias fueled the fire. A racist machine grinding him down. Tanya wouldn't know yet, Jamal wouldn't either, and Marcus lay there, the basement's safety a ghost, wondering how deep this pit went, how much more they'd take before he broke. Marcus Tate lay on the jail cell's concrete floor, his ribs throbbing from the guards' batons, blood crusted on his lip, the metallic tang sharp in his mouth. The assault charge Vincent Kessler pinned on him, claiming he'd attacked Marla, the clerk echoed in his skull, a lie that landed him here after the Leon's fleeting win. Judge Raymond Holt's smirk from the precinct window burned behind his eyes, a promise of more pain, and the shop, his dad's lifeline, felt like a ghost slipping through his fingers. He dragged himself to the cot, the springs screeching, his body a map of bruises, but his mind refused to quit. They'd caged him, beaten him, framed him, but he wasn't done. Not yet. A week in, he got library access, a perk from a bored guard who didn't care enough to stop him. The jail's legal shelf was a mess, dog-eared books stacked in a corner, but Marcus pounced on them, his hands shaking as he flipped pages under flickering fluorescent light. He studied late into the night, a stubby pencil scratching notes on napkins, his breath fogging in the chill. The tax lien from the basement haunted him, Pinnacle's forged hook, and he dug back into it, cross-referencing notary laws against Evelyn Price's name. His pulse spiked when he found it, buried in a statute. Notaries without active licenses voided any document they stamped. Price's lapse wasn't just a crack, it was a wrecking ball, and he'd swing it straight at Kessler's case. Could this free him? He filed to represent himself, a shaky motion scrawled on jail paper, and the guards laughed, tossing it to the clerk like a joke. But Holt had to let it through, his own rules boxing him in, and 2 weeks later, Marcus limped into court. His orange jumpsuit swapped for a borrowed suit from Jamal, too tight across his shoulders. His ribs ached with every step, his lips scabbed, but he stood tall, the notary evidence clutched in a manila folder. The gallery buzzed, half full with reporters and a few neighbors, Tanya in the back, her eyes fierce. Holt perched on his bench, his glasses glinting, his laugh rolling out like gravel. "Tate, you're a glutton for punishment. Defending yourself. This'll be a circus." Marcus met his gaze, voice steady. "Your Honor, I'm here to prove I didn't assault nobody. Sand Pinnacle's lien is trash." The trial kicked off fast, Kessler strutting in, his cufflinks flashing, his smile sharp as a razor. He called Marla first, her face pale, a bruise fading under her eye, her voice trembling as she swore Marcus jumped her outside the courthouse. "He grabbed me, hit me, said I'd pay for snitching." Marcus's stomach twisted, her lie a blade in his gut, but he kept his face still, scribbling notes. Kessler paced, his voice smooth. "Your Honor, this man's violent, desperate. The assault fits his pattern, rioting, forging, now this." Holt nodded, his smirk twitching, the gallery rustling with whispers. Marcus stood, his turn, his ribs screaming as he moved. "Marla, you say I hit you at 8 that morning. Where was I at 7:50? She blinked, hesitating. "I don't know." He pressed, calm but firm. "I was in lockup, logged in, checked the records." Holt grunted, waving a clerk to pull the log, and the room tensed, Kessler's jaw tightening. The clerk returned, paper in hand, voice flat. "Tate was in custody, 7:30 to 9. Marla's eyes darted, her story crumbling, and Marcus seized it, sliding the lien to the table. "Your Honor, this ain't about assault. It's about this, Pinnacle's fake lien. The notary, Evelyn Price, lost her license 3 months before. She stamped it. It's void, and they framed me to cover it." He handed up the state record, Price's lapse in black and white, the gallery gasping, a wave of shock rolling through. Holt snatched the page, his scowl deepening, his fingers tapping the bench. "A dead notary? Kessler, you got an explanation?" Kessler rose, his voice tight, a crack in his polish. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the assault. A clerical oversight, not fraud," Marcus cut in, his voice rising. "Oversight? They built their whole eviction on it. And Marla, they forced her to lie, same as Leon." Holt's eyes narrowed, his laugh gone, replaced by a growl. "Enough, Tate. Assault case is shaky, I'll give you that. Log checks out, charge dismissed." Marcus's chest loosened, a breath he'd held for weeks escaping, the gallery murmuring. Tanya's nod a silent cheer. He dodged the cage, flipped Kessler's frame, and the lien loomed large, a chance to claw the shop back. He turned to leave, relief washing over him, the circus turning in his favor. But Kessler wasn't out of tricks. He stood, his smile thin, lethal, pulling a new witness from his sleeve. "Your Honor, before we close, Officer Daniels has something to add." A cop swaggered in, buzz cut and badge gleaming, his voice flat. "I saw Tate swing first outside the precinct after his release. He's a menace." Marcus's head snapped up, his voice hoarse. "That's a lie. I never touch nobody." Daniels smirked, folding his arms, and Kessler leaned back, his eyes glinting. "Assault or not, Your Honor, this proves intent. He hates authority." Holt's smirk returned wider, his gavel slamming down. "Dismissed? Not so fast, Tate. I'm reinstating the charge and adding a hate crime, attacking a cop. That's personal." The room erupted, gasps and shouts, Marcus staggering back, his ribs a dull roar under the shock. "Hate crime? Me? You're twisting. This?" Holt waved him off, his laugh low and guttural. "Sit down, Tate. You're a thug who thinks he's smart. I see through you." The gavel cracked, a gunshot in Marcus's ears, and Kessler gathered his papers, his assistant whispering, something that made him nod, smug as ever. Tanya rushed forward, stopped by a bailiff, her yell piercing the chaos. "This ain't right." Marcus sank into his chair, the notary Wynne buried under Holt's bias, the system flipping his fight into a racist caricature. The shop faded further, his freedom a mirage, and Holt's stare promised more pain. A judge who'd rather see him rot than rise. The hate crime label wasn't just a charge, it was a brand. A scarlet letter, Holt carved with glee, Kessler's, puppet strings pulling tight. Marcus sat there, the courtroom's hum fading, his mind racing. He'd outsmarted them once, but they'd rewritten the rules, turned his defiance into a crime against their world. The lien still dangled, a thread of hope. But this new twist was a chain, heavy and cold. Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Holt's gone too far with this hate crime nonsense. Hit like if Kessler's dirty cop play has you fuming, and subscribe if you're rooting for Marcus to break this rigged game, because the fight's far from over. What happens when a man branded a villain finds a way to turn the crowd against the real crooks? Marcus Tate walked out of the courthouse on shaky legs, the hate crime charge from Judge Raymond Holt ringing in his ears like a bad engine knock, the air crisp with November bite. His ribs ached from the jail beating, his borrowed suit wrinkled. But the notary Wynne had sprung him on bail, a thin lifeline he clung to with raw hands. Vincent Kessler's cop twist had turned his victory sour, Holt's sneer branding him a thug, and the shop's ruins loomed in his mind, a ghost he couldn't bury. Tanya met him on the steps, her braids tight, her eyes blazing. "They're not stopping, Marcus, that hate crime. It's a lie to crush you." He nodded, his jaw locked, the fire in his gut flaring back. "Then we go bigger. They want a fight? I'll give 'em one." He spent the night at Tanya's, the couch his bunker, a cracked phone his weapon. He typed fast, thumbs smudging the screen, posting a video to every social feed he could hit. "This is Marcus Tate. Holt's calling me a hate criminal for fighting Pinnacle's lies. They beat my witness, trashed my shop, framed me, all 'cause I'm black and won't bow. Share this. Show up. We're taking it back." He hit upload. The clip shaky but raw, his bruised face lit by a lamp, the shop's slurs flashing from old photos. Tanya boosted it, her friends retweeting, and by morning it had 10,000 views, comments piling up, a roar building online. Marcus watched. The numbers climb, his chest tightening, a spark catching. Could this be the edge he needed? The protest hit the next day bigger than before, 100 strong outside Pinnacle's tower. Then 200, then 500, spilling across downtown Detroit like floodwater. Marcus stood on a pickup's tailgate, megaphone crackling, his voice hoarse but fierce. "Holt thinks I'm a thug? Let's show him we're a force. They can't silence us." Signs bobbed. "Justice for Tate. Holt resign." And fists punched the air, a rhythm that shook the pavement. Tanya flanked him, her shout cutting through. "They burned our shop, now they're burning our rights." Reporters swarmed, cameras rolling, a news chopper buzzing overhead, and Marcus felt it, a tide rising, the city waking up. Pinnacle's windows loomed, suits peering down, and he spotted Kessler's shadow again, a flicker of panic in that stiff frame. The video went viral by noon, 50,000 views, then 100,000, hashtags trending, a Tate Fights Back lighting up screens across Michigan. Marcus climbed down, his ribs screaming, but his grin was real, the crowd's energy a jolt to his bones. Tanya squeezed his arm, her whisper fierce. "You're doing it, Marcus, they're scared." He nodded, watching a kid live-stream the chaos, the roar echoing off glass and steel. Holt had to feel this, had to squirm, his courtroom throne wobbling under the weight of 1,000 voices. The courthouse loomed blocks away, reporters sprinting there, and Marcus imagined the old man's scowl, his gavel useless against this storm. For a moment he believed he'd turned the game, made them blink, then the air shifted. A low chant cut through the crowd, harsh and guttural, not his people's rhythm. 50 men in black hoodies pushed in, their faces masked, Confederate patches glinting on sleeves, a stench of hate rolling off them. Marcus froze, the megaphone slipping as they raised bats, pipes clanging against signs, their shouts slashing. The air. "Go home, filth. This ain't your city." The crowd screamed, splitting, and Marcus yelled, "Stay together!" But the supremacists charged, smashing into his line, glass shattering as they hurled bottles. Tanya ducked a swing, her cry sharp, and Marcus lunged, tackling a thug before a pipe cracked his shoulder, pain exploding down his arm. Chaos erupted, fists and blood, the chopper circling like a vulture. He staggered back, the tailgate slick with spilled beer, and saw it dawn. Kessler's hand. Pinnacle hadn't just watched, they'd hired this mob, flipped his protest into a war. Sirens wailed, cops pouring in, but they aimed at his people, batons swinging, cuffs snapping, the supremacists melting into alleys untouched. Marcus dragged. Tanya behind a dumpster, her shirt torn, her breath ragged. "They set us up," she gasped, and he nodded, his vision blurring, the crowd thinning under blue lights. Then a boom shook the night, smoke rising miles off, and his phone buzzed, Jamal's voice frantic. "Marcus, Tanya's house, it's burning. They hit it." His gut dropped, ice flooding his veins, the roar of flames already in his ears. He bolted with her, shoving through chaos 3 miles in 10 minutes, his lungs raw, his shoulder throbbing. Tanya's street glowed orange, her little bungalow a pyre, fire trucks too late, neighbors gaping from lawns. The roof caved, sparks, raining, and Marcus choked on smoke, spotting a note nailed to a tree, ink smudged but clear. "Back off or burn." Tanya sank to her knees, a wail tearing from her throat, and Marcus pulled her close, his fists shaking, the mob's work a dagger in his chest. Pinnacle hadn't just rioted, they'd torched her home, his anchor, a message carved in ash. He'd pushed them, and they'd pushed back harder. Kessler's strings pulling a hate group's fire. The next morning, Holt's voice crackled on the news, his face stern behind a podium. "Marcus Tate incited a riot last night, endangering this city. I've issued a warrant for his arrest, felony charges pending." Marcus watched from Jamal's basement, the TV's glow cold, Holt's smirk peeking through the mask of justice. The judge blamed him, twisted the mob's attack into his crime, his bias a hammer slamming down. Then the bulldozers rolled in, live feed cutting to MLK Boulevard, Pinnacle's crew flattening the shop's remains, steel jaws chewing concrete, and memory into dust. Marcus's breath caught, his dad's ghost erased overnight, the protest's fire snuffed by Holt's gavel and Kessler's cash. Tanya sat beside him, her eyes red, her voice a whisper. "They took everything, Marcus." He nodded, the basement's damp sinking into his bones, the warrant a noose tightening. The mob wasn't random, it was hired. Kessler's retaliation for the viral storm, Holt's racism greasing the wheels. The house fire wasn't just loss, it was terror, a line crossed into pure vengeance. He'd rallied a city, shaken their throne, but they'd burned his world to keep it, the shop's lot a grave, his freedom a fugitive's thread. Holt's warrant echoed, a promise of chains, and Marcus knew the fight had shifted, a war he couldn't win from the light. Marcus Tate slipped out of Jamal's basement at dusk, the warrant from Judge Raymond Holt a shadow snapping at his heels, the ashes of Tanya's burned house still clinging to his boots. The shop's lot was rubble now, Pinnacle properties, bulldozers erasing his dad's legacy, and Vincent Kessler's supremacist mob had turned his viral protest into a death sentence. He hugged Tanya goodbye, her eyes red, her whisper fierce. "Don't let them win, Marcus." He nodded, a lump in his throat, then bolted, a duffel slung over his bruised shoulder, the city's hum a distant roar as he hit the freeway. Detroit. Faded in the rear view of a borrowed beater, his breath fogging the cracked windshield, the weight of Holt's felony riot charge pressing down like a lead block. Could he outrun this? He landed 50 miles north, a nowhere motel off I-75, its neon sign buzzing vacancy and flickering pink. The room smelled of stale smoke and regret, the bed sagging under stained sheets, but it was a hole to hide in, a fugitive's den. Marcus dumped his bag, pulling a burner phone Jamal had slipped him, its prepaid minutes a lifeline to the outside. He paced the threadbare carpet, his ribs aching, replaying the mob's bats, the fire's roar, Holt's smirk. The bribery email Carla betrayed him over gnawed at him, a thread he couldn't drop. He dialed a number he'd memorized, a federal. Agent named Reese, a gruff voice from a tip line he'd called weeks back. "Agent Reese, it's Tate. Pinnacle's dirty, and I've got more." Could this be his last shot? Reese met him at a truck stop at midnight, a hulking man in a grey coat, his eyes sharp under a ball cap. Marcus handed over a USB, files he'd scraped from Pinnacle's public audits before the raid, his voice low. "Kessler's been bribing City Hall, not just Daniels. Look at the transfers. 5 grand here, 10 there, all tied to evictions like mine." Reese skimmed the drive on a laptop, his grunt low. "This is solid, Tate. I'll raid their office. Stay low." Marcus nodded, a flicker of hope sparking, the motel's damp walls waiting as he slipped back, the burner buzzing with a text, "Feds moving tomorrow." He exhaled, his fists unclenching, the shop's ghost stirring. Had he finally hit Kessler where it hurt? The next day, news broke, choppers buzzing over Pinnacle's tower, feds swarming in black vests, Kessler's face pale on live TV as agents hauled boxes from his suite. Marcus watched from the motel's grainy set, the volume low, a grin tugging at his split lip. Holt's warrant hit a snag, the judge forced to suspend it under federal pressure, his scowl flashing on screen, a throne rocked by Marcus's leak. Tanya called, her voice shaky but bright. "You did it, Marcus. They're running scared." He leaned back, the sagging bed creaking, relief washing over him like coolant on a hot engine. The shop wasn't back, but Kessler's cage rattled. Holt's grip slipped, and for a moment he thought he'd bought safety, a breath to plan his next move. Then the door crashed open at 2 a.m, wood splintering, 3 men in hoods storming in, Confederate patches glinting, their boots thudding the floor. Marcus lunged for his duffel, but a fist cracked his jaw, stars bursting in his skull as he hit the wall. "Where's the drive, Tate?" a gravelly voice snarled, a blade flashing an inch from his throat. He gasped, blood trickling, his mind racing. "It's gone, feds have it." A second thug yanked him up, zip ties biting his wrists, and the third barked into a phone. "We got him." "Bring the girl." Marcus's gut twisted, dread flooding his veins. "Girl, Tanya." The line clicked, Kessler's voice faint but clear. "Get the evidence back, or she's dead." They dragged him to a van, tires screeching as it peeled out, the motel's neon fading behind. 30 minutes later, they dumped him in a barn off a dirt road, hay scratching his skin, the air thick with diesel and fear. Tanya stumbled in, hands bound, her lip bleeding, her eyes wide but defiant. "Marcus!" she cried, and he lunged, only to catch a boot in his ribs, collapsing with a groan. The leader, a wiry man with a shaved head, sneered. "You leaked, Tate. Now you pay. Hand over the backups or she don't leave." Marcus spat blood, his voice hoarse. "I don't have backups. Feds took it all." The thug smirked, raising a phone, Kessler's orders looping in his head. Had Marcus's win just cost Tanya her life? Holt's voice hit the airwaves hours later, a press clip blasting from the barn's radio, his tone icy. "Marcus Tate's a terrorist, orchestrating chaos from hiding. Federal interference won't shield him. He's a danger to Detroit." Marcus froze. The word terrorist, a sledgehammer. Holt twisting the raid into his crime, Kessler's mob his army. Drones hummed outside, a low buzz cutting the night, their cameras sweeping the fields, a kill zone locking around him. Tanya whispered, "They're hunting you, Marcus," and he nodded. The barn's walls closing in, the supremacists pacing, their knives glinting. Kessler hadn't just struck back, he'd escalated, turned a leak into a death trap, Holt's racism fueling the lie. The leader grabbed Tanya, dragging her to a corner, a gun pressed to her temple, his snarl sharp. "Last chance, Tate. Evidence. Or she's gone." Marcus's mind spun, his ribs screaming, no drive, no proof, just the feds' raid he couldn't undo. He'd shaken Pinnacle, rattled Holt, but they'd countered with terror, kidnapping his sister, branding him a monster. The shop's rubble, Tanya's ashes, now this. Each blow heavier, each cut deeper, all because he dared to fight. He locked eyes with her, her nod subtle, a silent vow to endure, but the drones grew louder, the net tightening, and Marcus knew he'd pushed them too far. A fugitive with nowhere left to run. Drop a comment with number 1 if you think Marcus should have kept those files closer. Hit like if Kessler's kidnapping play has you on edge, and subscribe if you're with Marcus through this brutal twist, because the stakes are skyrocketing. What happens when a man with no cards left trades everything for a sister's life? Marcus Tate knelt in the barn's damp hay, his wrists zip-tied, blood dripping from his jaw onto the dirt, the supremacist's knives glinting in the dim lantern light. Tanya slumped in the corner, her hands bound, her lips swollen, her eyes locked on him with a mix of fear and steel. Vincent Kessler's voice had crackled through the thug's phone, a cold command to retrieve the bribery evidence Marcus leaked to the feds, or Tanya wouldn't walk out alive. Judge Raymond Holt's terrorist label buzzed on the radio, drones humming outside, a noose tightening around them both. The wiry leader loomed, his shaved head gleaming, a pistol pressed to Tanya's temple. "Talk, Tate. Where's the backup?" Marcus's ribs throbbed from the last kick, his voice hoarse. "I told you there's no backup, feds have it all." The thug snarled, his boots slamming Marcus's gut, air exploding from his lungs as he doubled over, hay scratching his face. Tanya yelled, "Stop it!" But the leader waved her off, his sneer sharp. "You're lying, Tate. Kessler says you're too smart to give it all up. Last chance." Marcus coughed, blood flecking his lips, his mind racing. He had nothing, no drive, no files, just the leak that sparked the raid, now a death sentence for his sister. The shop's rubble, her burned house, all his fights led here, a barn in nowhere with a gun to her head. He met her gaze, her nod subtle, a silent plea to save her, and he knew he'd trade anything, even the truth, to get her out. He forced the words, his throat raw. "All right, I've got a copy. Hidden at Jamal's basement safe. Let her go. I'll take you." The leader's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering, but greed won out. He barked into the phone, "He's got a stash, we're moving." A muffled reply, Kessler's tone clipped, "Get it, then finish them." Marcus's stomach twisted. The lie a gamble, but the thug cut Tanya's ties, shoving her toward a second van, her stumble breaking his heart. "Marcus, no!" she cried, but he shook his head, his voice firm. "Go, I'll handle this." They dragged him to the first van, tires crunching gravel as they split. Tanya's ride peeling north, his south, a deal struck in blood. The drop-off came fast, an abandoned warehouse off a rural highway, its roof sagging, windows shattered like broken teeth. The supremacists hauled Marcus inside, the air thick with rust and rot, their boots echoing on cracked concrete. He led them to a corner, a rusted locker he'd spotted, praying the bluff held. "It's in there," he rasped, and the leader kicked it open, empty but for cobwebs and a dead rat. His snarl erupted, "You played us!" Before a fist cracked Marcus's skull, stars bursting as he hit the floor. They didn't stop, boots and pipes raining down, ribs snapping, blood pooling. Under him their grunts a savage chorus. "Life feed it," the leader barked, and a thug propped a phone streaming the carnage, Kessler's voice faint through the speaker. "Good. Let Detroit see their hero." Marcus faded in and out, pain a red haze, his body a wreck, but the key. Beating slowed, their breaths heaving as they stepped back. He lay still, hay stuck to his blood, the phone's lens a cold eye beaming his ruin to the world. Tanya was free. That was the deal, the only win he could claw from this hell. Hours later, a siren wailed, faint then loud, and the supremacists bolted, tires screeching into the night. A rogue cop, a young guy with shaky hands, burst in, his flashlight sweeping the gore. "Tate, Jesus, hold on." He cut the ties, radio, crackling as he called it in. "Found him warehouse off 67, he's bad." Marcus groaned, the cop's voice a lifeline, the video already leaking beyond Kessler's grip. By dawn, the feed hit the streets. A grainy clip of Marcus's beating gone viral, 100,000 views in an hour, then 1 million. Outrage boiling. Over Detroit's feeds. Tanya, safe at Jamal's, saw it first, her scream waking the house, and she called every reporter she knew, her voice breaking. "They tried to kill him!" Protests flared, crowds choking MLK Boulevard, signs screaming, "Justice for Marcus!" The cop's leak forced Holt's hand, the judge grumbling on air. "We're reviewing this brutality," his scowl tight, A throne rocked again. Marcus woke in a hospital bed, tubes snaking his arms, his face a swollen mask, but alive. The Job's fight flickering back. Tanya gripped his hand, her whisper fierce. "You're a hero, Marcus, they can't hide this." He nodded, pain spiking, hope a faint pulse under the wreck of his body. Then the nurse stiffened, her eyes wide as she checked a monitor, her voice low. "Mr. Tate, don't move. There's something under your bed." Marcus froze, his breath shallow, as she bent down, pulling a black box wired with blinking lights, a timer ticking at 5 minutes. Air bomb, Kessler's final play, rigged to blow if he testified. She bolted, yelling for security, and Marcus's heart hammered, the room spinning, his win a trap. Holt visited an hour later, flanked by guards, his smirk sharp as he leaned close, his whisper cold. "Stay quiet, Tate, or this gets worse. You're lucky I don't pull the plug myself." He straightened, feigning concern for the cameras, but Marcus saw the truth. The judge's bias, a fuse lit long ago. The bomb squad swarmed, diffusing it with 30 seconds left, sweat beading on their brows. The hospital a circus of flashing lights and barked orders. Marcus lay there, his body screaming. The video's roar a distant echo. Kessler's threat a shadow over his fragile victory. The shop was dust, Tanya's home ash. And now this, a death machine under his bed, each blow heavier, each cut deeper. All because he dared to fight. Holt's visit wasn't sympathy, it was a warning. Kessler's puppet master pulling strings from the bench. The feds had the leak, the crowd had his back, but this was personal, a war he'd barely survived. And the next strike loomed, a guillotine he couldn't see. Marcus Tate lay rigid in the hospital bed, tubes snaking his arms, his swollen face a map of bruises from the supremacists' beating, the bomb's black box still ticking in his mind. Vincent Kessler's threat, a death trap under his mattress, had been diffused with 30 seconds to spare, but Judge Raymond Holt's whispered warning, "Stay quiet or this gets worse," lingered like exhaust in his lungs. The shop was rubble, Tanya's house ash, and the viral video of his thrashing had sparked outrage, yet Kessler's claws dug deeper, Holt's smirk a shield for Pinnacle's dirt. A nurse hovered, her hands shaky from the bomb scare, her voice low. "You're lucky, Mr. Tate, that thing was live." He nodded, pain spiking his ribs, his mind racing. Luck wasn't enough. He needed a strike. She lingered, a wiry woman named Grace with tired eyes, her badge glinting under fluorescent light. "I saw your video. My brother's shop got taken too. I can help." Marcus's pulse quickened. Her offer a crack in the dark. "How?" She glanced at the door, then knelt, tugging wires from the bomb's shell. "I work security tech. We can kill this quiet." Together they pried it open, her fingers deft, his trembling but steady, snipping a red line as sweat beaded his brow. The timer froze at 10 seconds, a hiss escaping, and Grace stashed it under the bed, her whisper fierce. "You're clear. Now hit back." He nodded, a plan sparking, the hospital's hum a war drum in his ears. Tanya slipped in that night. Her lip healed but her eyes hollow, Jamal trailing with a laptop under his arm. "Feds are stalling, Marcus." "Kessler's still free," she said, her voice tight. He sat up, wincing, the bomb's weight a ghost on his chest. "Then we don't wait. Pinnacle's got dirt online, I've seen it before. We hack it." Jamal grinned, cracking his knuckles, and set up on the tray table, the screen glowing blue in the dim room. Marcus guided him, memory sharp from basement nights, targeting Pinnacle's servers through a back door he'd found in public audits. Lines of code scrolled, his breath shallow until a memo popped up, Holt's name in bold. "Kessler, expedite black evictions, cash wired, keep it clean." Marcus's blood boiled, a smoking gun, Holt's own words tying him to the racist. Grind. They leaked it at midnight, Jamal hitting upload, the memo blasting to every news outlet, blog and feed in Detroit. By dawn it was everywhere, a million views, hashtags erupting, your Holt exposed trending, the city's roar shaking the hospital walls. Marcus watched from his bed, the laptop's glow cold, Tanya's hand gripping his, her whisper fierce. "You got him, Marcus?" Reporters swarmed the courthouse, feds storming Holt's chambers mid-trial, his gavel mid-swing as cuffs snapped on, his laugh choked into panic. The feed cut live, Holt's face red, shouting, "This is a setup," but the memo's ink burned too bright. Pinnacle's bribes a noose around his neck. Marcus exhaled, his ribs a dull ache. The shop's fight clawing back from the grave. Holt's arrest hit hard, the judge out on bail by noon, his throne cracked but his glare intact, a promise of revenge flashing on screen. Marcus sank back. Relief. A thin veil over dread. Kessler's silence louder than the chaos. He'd flipped the game, turned Holt's bias into chains, and the crowd's fury was his shield. Tanya grinned, rare and bright. "They're done, Marcus. We won." He nodded, but his gut twisted, the bomb's tick echoing. Kessler's next. Move a shadow he couldn't see. Then the hospital phone rang, Jamal snatching it, his face paling. "They hit your hideout, Marcus. SWAT's there now." Marcus's heart sank, the victory souring fast. Kessler's counterpunch already landing. He bolted upright, tubes ripping free, pain a red haze as he stumbled to the window, the city's skyline glinting under dusk. Sirens wailed. A black van, screeching past, and Jamal hacked a feed, pulling up live drone shots. SWAT swarmed Jamal's row house, rifles gleaming, glass shattering as they stormed the basement, Kessler's voice crackling on a leaked radio. "Tate hacked us. Frame him for it." Marcus's breath caught, his wind flipping into a trap, the memo's leak twisted against him. Then a shot rang out, sharp and final, and Tanya screamed, clutching her side, blood blooming through her shirt as she crumpled. A sniper's bullet, Kessler's mark, had punched through the window, the glass, a spiderweb around the hole. Marcus dropped beside her, his hands pressing the wound, blood slicking his fingers, her gasps ragged. "Tanya, hold on." Grace rushed in, yelling for a doctor, but Marcus's world narrowed, her pulse weak under his palms, the room spinning. SWAT's boots thudded closer, radios barking. "Tate's armed, take him down." He hadn't hacked from here, but Kessler's lie painted him a threat. The sniper's shot a brutal exclamation. Doctors swarmed, wheeling Tanya out, her eyes fluttering shut, and Marcus staggered back, his shirt red, the memo's triumph ashes in his mouth. Holt's arrest had sparked this, Kessler's revenge a bullet through his sister. The shop's fight costing more than he'd ever dreamed. The feds stormed in minutes later, pinning him to the wall, cuffs biting his wrists, their shouts a blur. "You're under arrest, Tate. Cybercrime, assault." He didn't fight, his body numb, Tanya's blood a stain on his hands, the hospital a war zone of flashing lights and barked orders. Holt's bail kept him free, his smirk a ghost in Marcus's. Mind the judge's strings still pulling Kessler's trigger. The memo had cracked the throne, but the counterstrike was savage, Tanya's life the price. The shop a distant echo in a fight turned deadly. He'd hit back, shaken their world, but they'd hit harder, a racist machine grinding him down, and the cell awaited, a cage he couldn't outsmart this time. Marcus Tate sat in the back of a squad car, cuffs cutting into his wrists, the metallic clank of the door still ringing in his ears as the hospital faded behind him. Tanya's blood stained his shirt, her shooting a sniper's gift from Vincent. Kessler, the SWAT raid, pinning him for a hack he didn't commit from that room. Judge Raymond Holt's arrest had cracked the system, his memo exposing racist bribes, but Kessler's counterstrike had flipped it, framing Marcus as a cyber criminal, Holt out on bail and pulling strings. The shop was dust, Tanya fighting for life, and the feds hauled him to the precinct, their radios barking lies. He stared out the smeared window, Detroit's lights blurring, his mind a storm of grief and fire. They'd taken everything, but he wasn't done. Jamal met him at the station, his welder's hands slipping a phone through the bars, his whisper fierce. "Tanya's stable, Marcus. Docs say she'll pull through." Relief hit like a wrench. To the chest, loosening the knot, but the memo's original. A crumpled page he'd stashed at Jamal's burned in his pocket, Holt's own words a weapon he'd wield. The feds cut him loose by dawn, no evidence sticking. The hacker ghost in their system, and Marcus bolted, his ribs screaming, his plan sharp. Holt's bail hearing loomed that afternoon, a chance to bury the judge, and he'd storm it, grief fueling his stride. The shop's ruins called, a battlefield he'd reclaim, Kessler's endgame be damned. He hit the courthouse at noon, the memo clutched tight, his borrowed jacket torn, his face a swollen mask of bruises. The gallery buzzed, Reporters and neighbors. Packing the pews, Holt perched at the defendant's table, his glasses glinting, his smirk faint but smug. Marcus shoved through, his voice raw as he slammed the page on the clerk's desk. "Your Honor, this is Holt's confession." He wrote, "Expedite black evictions cash-wired to Kessler. He's been rigging cases, targeting us for years." The room erupted, gasps and shouts. The judge presiding, a grey-haired woman named Ellis, snatching the memo, her eyes narrowing as she scanned Holt's jagged scrawl. Holt shot up, his voice cracking. "That's forged. Tate's a liar." Ellis waved him down, her tone steel. "Sit, Mr. Holt. This matches filings we've seized. Explain it." Holt stammered, his smirk gone, sweat beading his brow. The gallery leaning in, a tide turning. Marcus pressed, his voice steady despite the ache. "He took bribes to steal homes, my dad's shop, dozens more, all black families. Check Pinnacle's books, it's there." Reporters scribbled. Cameras. Rolling, and Ellis's gavel cracked, silencing the chaos. "I've seen enough. Holt, you're remanded, no bail." "Trial's set." The cuffs snapped back on, Holt's roar echoing as guards dragged him out, his throne shattered, his laugh a ghost in the dust. Marcus staggered out, Tanya's pulse a faint beat in his mind, the memo's win a hollow thud against her, blood on his hands. He'd buried Holt, cracked the system wide, but Kessler loomed, unbowed. His snipers shot a promise of more. The crowd cheered, fists high. "Justice for Tate," ringing off the steps. But Marcus slipped away, his boots crunching gravel as he hit MLK Boulevard at dusk. The shop's lot stretched bare, a scar of rubble and memory, and he sank to his knees, the cold seeping through, his dad's ghost whispering in the wind. He'd won a round, thought it was over, but the air shifted, a shadow moving fast. A figure emerged, a hitman in a black coat, his gun glinting, his steps silent as he closed in. Kessler's final play. Marcus froze, the barrel pressing his skull, the steel cold against his skin, the man's voice low. "Kessler says goodbye, Tate. You pushed too far." His finger tightened, a click echoing, and Marcus's heart stopped, time slowing to a crawl. Then a hum cut the dark, a tiny recorder in his jacket pocket. A trick Jamal had rigged, buzzing live to a journalist's feed, a woman named Lena who'd trailed him since the protest. "Kessler hired you, huh?" "Say it," Marcus rasped, his voice steady, the gun a breath from ending him. The hitman hesitated, his eyes flicking, the recorder's red light a pinprick in the gloom. "Yeah, Kessler paid me. Clean hit, no loose ends." The words hit the air, Lena's broadcast crackling live, a million ears catching Kessler's confession, the feed spiking as Detroit gasped. The hitman's grip wavered, his snarl sharp. "You're dead anyway!" But Marcus lunged, his shoulder screaming, knocking the gun wide, the shot cracking into the dirt. They grappled, fists and gravel, Marcus's ribs afire as he pinned. The man, the recorder rolling, Lena's voice faint. "We've got it, Marcus. Kessler's done." The hitman broke free, bolting into the night, his coat flapping, stunned by the trap. Marcus collapsed, blood trickling from his nose, the rubble cradling him, the broadcast's roar a lifeline in his ears. Kessler's voice, through the hitman, was out, a noose tightening around Pinnacle's neck, the shop's ruins a stage for the kill shot. He'd faced death, turned it back, and the city heard it roar, the crowd's fury a shield he hadn't planned. Tanya's stable pulse, Holt's cuffs, now this, a triple blow to the machine, but Kessler's reach lingered, a shadow uncaught. He dragged himself up, the recorder warm in his pocket, the fight's cost etched in his bones, a showdown that broke the rules and left him standing, barely. Marcus Tate sprawled in the rubble of his dad's shop, blood trickling from his nose, the hitman's gun still warm against his skull, its barrel glinting in the faint glow of a distant street lamp. Vincent Kessler's confession, caught on the recorder in Marcus's pocket, blasted live through Lena's broadcast, a million ears hearing the truth, the city's roar shaking the night. The hitman, a wiry figure in a black coat, froze, his finger trembling on the trigger, the red light of the device a pinprick in the dark. Marcus's ribs screamed, his shoulder afire from the grapple, but he locked eyes with the man, his voice hoarse but steady. "You're done, man. They've got Kessler on tape. You pull that, you're just the fall guy." Turn on him, I'll get you immunity. The hitman's breath hitched, his gaze flicking to the recorder, then the horizon, sirens wailing faint but closing fast. Marcus pressed, his words sharp despite the ache. You heard Lena, it's out. Kessler's sinking and you're on the ship. Talk to the feds, you walk, I'll make it happen. The man's jaw tightened, sweat beading his brow, the gun wavering as the broadcast looped. Kessler's voice damning him. Paid me, clean hit! The hitman cursed, low and guttural, then lowered the barrel, his snarl fading to a grimace. You're a bastard, Tate. He bolted, coat flapping, vanishing into the alleys as cop cars screeched. Up, lights flashing, their shouts slicing the air. Marcus sank back, the gravel biting his palms, relief a cold wave over his wrecked body. The feds swarmed the lot, radios crackling, a dozen badges pinning Kessler's empire to the wall. Lena's feed hit 2 million views, the hitman's words. A noose, and by dawn, Vincent Kessler was cuffed, hauled from Pinnacle's tower, his cufflinks dull, his screams echoing as agents shoved him into a van. This is Tate's lie, he yelled, but the tape didn't bend. The city's outrage, a hammer slamming down. Marcus watched from a hospital cot, Tanya beside him, her bandaged side a silent scar, her hand gripping his, her whisper fierce. You got him, Marcus. It's over? He nodded, his swollen face throbbing, the shop's lot flashing on screen, a news chopper circling the rubble he'd reclaimed. The feds seized Pinnacle's assets, the shop's deed back in his name. A bittersweet win carved in blood and ash. He walked the lot 2 days later, crutches clicking on concrete, the air crisp with December chill, Tanya trailing slow, her steps careful. The rubble stretched wide, a graveyard of tools and dreams, but it was his again, a blank slate to rebuild. He sank to a busted chair, his dad's ghost in the wind, the fight's cost etched in every bruise. Holt's conviction, Kessler's, cuffs, the hitman's flip, each a brick in a wall he'd torn down, the system's claws blunted by his grit. Tanya knelt beside him, her voice soft. Dad'd be proud, Marcus. You didn't break. He smiled, faint but real. The shop's shadow a promise, a future he'd fight for. The crowd's roar a shield he hadn't expected. Then the hitman's words hit him, a shard lodged deep, whispered as he'd fled. Holt's death wasn't... Natural, Tate, watch your back. Marcus froze, the hospital's sterile hum flashing back, Holt's smirk a ghost in his mind. News broke that afternoon, a clip cutting through the celebration. Holt found dead in his cell, a heart attack, they said, his bail revoked, his trial looming. Marcus's gut twisted, the timing too clean, the hitman's warning a siren in his skull. He'd assumed victory, thought the judge's fall was the end, but this was off, a shadow moving behind the chaos. Tanya saw his face, her brow creasing. What's wrong? He shook his head, the crutches trembling, a chill sinking into his bones. A letter came the next morning, slipped under Jamal's door, where Marcus crashed, no stamp, no return, just his name in jagged ink. He tore it open, the paper crisp, the words short and sharp. You think you've won, Tate, but Holt was a pawn. Dig deeper and you're next. His breath caught, the room tilting, Tanya snatching it, her gasp loud in the quiet. Marcus, what's this mean? He didn't answer, his mind racing, the hitman's hint, Holt's death, now this, a thread pulling tight. Pinnacle was down. Kessler locked, but someone higher watched, a racist cabal still breathing, their claws unclipped. He'd shattered their front, but the war stretched wider, a hydra with heads he couldn't see. He limped to the lot that night, the letter in his pocket, the city's hum a distant pulse, the rubble a mirror of his fight. He'd talked the hitman down, buried Kessler, reclaimed the shop, but this twist flipped it all, a victory laced with poison. The shop was his, Tanya alive, Holt gone, yet the threat loomed, a guillotine poised to drop. He sank to the ground, the cold seeping through, his dad's voice faint in the dark. He'd won the battle, broken the machine, but the war wasn't over. A shadow cabal hunting him, their reach a mystery he couldn't outrun. The recorder sat silent, its red light dead, but the fight burned on, a spark in his gut, a promise to dig, to face whatever came next. Marcus Tate's journey teaches us resilience in the face of systemic racism, a beast that doesn't just growl, but bites with unrelenting fury. He started with nothing but a stack of papers and a burning will to save his dad's shop, facing a racist judge, Raymond Holt, who laughed at his pain, and a corporate shark, Vincent Kessler, who wielded power like a weapon. The lesson here is clear. Justice isn't handed out. It's wrestled from the jaws of those who'd rather see you broken. Marcus didn't have a law degree, but he had grit, turning nights of study into weapons that cracked Holt's throne and Kessler's empire. Every setback, Leon's beating, Tanya's shooting, the shop's ruin, taught him that fighting back means taking hits, hard ones, and still standing. Another takeaway is the power of truth, amplified by a community's voice. Marcus's viral protests and leaked evidence turned whispers into a roar, proving one man's stand can ignite a city's fury. But the final twist, Holt's death and the shadowy cabal's letter, hammers home a darker truth. Victories can be illusions, masks over deeper battles. Racism isn't just one judge or one firm, it's a hydra, and cutting one head doesn't kill it. Marcus's story urges us to dig, to question, to never settle for half-won fights. So, what's your lesson from Marcus's war? Drop a comment with your take, hit like if his grit inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of justice's grind. Share this if you believe truth can topple thrones. Thanks for riding this roller coaster with us. May you find strength to face your own battles and wisdom, to see the shadows behind the winds.